ser, estar, por, para, lo, le, que, cuál. You probably heard these words before, but never really known which one to use. And so today I'm going to go through every single verse's concept in Spanish and show you exactly how I approach them.
Podré para mejorar mi español cuando no tengo mucho tiempo libre para estudiar español.
Soy Hamid, hablo 4 idiomas y aprendí español 4 veces más rápido que el estudiante medio en solo 120 horas. You know, the reason why these concepts in Spanish confuse people who speak English who are trying to learn Spanish is because English usually blurs those lines. Okay, what I mean by this is that English doesn't really separate words in the way that Spanish does. You can view this as a negative thing and think, oh, that's annoying that Spanish does that. But on the other hand, it actually gives you a certain freedom of expression that English doesn't, because English doesn't have those tools. So if we hear, for example, to be is ser and estar, right? Even though to be in English is just to be. Or same thing with saber and conocer. The people tell you that they both mean to know. Or por and para, they tell you that they both mean for, okay? The way that people teach these, in my opinion, is very bad. Because in my experience, they never really explain why, and they don't really teach the logic of it. Starting with ser and estar, this is how I like to approach ser and estar, okay? And this is also proven linguistically, because we hear that to be in Spanish is ser and estar. It's both of these verbs. But the difference that people like to tell you is that ser is for permanent things and estar is for temporary things. And that's just simply false. I want you to forget that, because that's not how the native Spanish brain works. That's not how it's used in Spanish. And it's also not shown in the actual linguistics of the language either. What's actually proven linguistically is the real meaning of ser and estar, which is that ser is used for characteristics and estar is used for states, okay? So, ser, there's the phrase un ser humano in Spanish, which means a human being. And a person's biggest characteristic is that they're human. Okay, if they're not human, then they're not a person. So a person's biggest characteristic is that they're human, which is why you say a human being. Un ser humano. You use ser in Spanish. And so ser is used for to be when it comes to characteristics, okay? Estar, being for states, is actually proven even easier. Is actually proven even more easily, which is in the word United States, which is Estados Unidos. And estado is the past tense of estar. States is estados, and estado comes from estar. The reason why this matters is because if you were to say, he is boring, using ser, the word for bored or boring is aburrido in Spanish. If it's a guy, if it's a girl, it's aburrida. If you were to say, está aburrido, then you'd say, he is bored. He is bored. Like, he is bored right now in this moment. He's in a state of boredom. Whereas if you said, es aburrido, using ser, you would be referring to his character. You'd be saying, he's a boring person. Right? His characteristic is boring. And so the reason why this is more accurate than thinking that it's temporary and permanent is because certain things like your professions are temporary, right? But professions are actually characteristics, right? If your character was a Pokemon card or whatever, on video games they have like these cards, your profession would be one of the characteristics listed on your character. And so professions in Spanish use ser, not estar, even though professions aren't permanent. And so another thing is that, for example, being dead in Spanish, right? Being dead in Spanish uses estar, but being dead is permanent. So you think they use ser, but it doesn't. It uses estar because being dead is a state that you're in. Your body is in the state of death or dead, right? Of not being alive. And so that's why it's using estar, not ser. So that's the explanation of ser versus estar. Okay, let's talk about saber versus conocer. So they tell you that both of these verbs mean to know, and in certain contexts they do. Here's the difference. So saber is related to an English slang, which is savvy. You might have heard of saying like tech savvy. If someone's tech savvy, that means that they are knowledgeable in tech. And so savvy and saber are related. And so saber means to know, as in to have knowledge of. So if I say, I know that he is like this. You're saying that you have knowledge that he is like this. Okay? Now, conocer is to know in the sense of to recognize. Where if I asked you, do you know this artist? When I ask the question, do you know this artist? What I'm really asking you is, do you recognize this artist? And this is also proven linguistically because the verb to recognize in Spanish is reconocer. So this is proven in the language. Conocer can also mean to meet, like to meet someone. So these are both proven linguistically, just like ser and estar. Saber, to have knowledge of. Conocer, to recognize. And in English, when you say to know could mean to recognize, but also to have knowledge of. And so English is the one being a little annoying here, not Spanish. And by the way, if you're just getting started, I highly recommend joining the Speedy Spanish Hub. It's a free community I created with a bunch of free resources and guides to help you start learning Spanish with these methods. And it'll be the first link in the description. Moving along, we have por versus para, and this one's, it's easier to distinguish between por and para. Because what you hear is that por and para both mean for. I want you to forget the notion that por and para both mean for. Because while it's technically true, it's not helpful. So, I want you to think about por and para as having several meanings because each of them have several meanings. Each have about 3 meanings. Luckily, all 3 of these meanings all follow based off each other, so it's not very hard to remember, okay? Now, para means for. That's the first meaning of para. It means for in the absolute traditional sense of like, he cooked for us, right? That for. When you think of the word for, that's what para is used for. The second is it means to. Para means to as well. The word for to in Spanish is also a. And so, to and for in Spanish are actually interchangeable. Para means both for, but it also means to. And natives will actually use para as to more than the word for to, right? If you were to say we're going to Mexico, natives might say vamos para Mexico instead of vamos a Mexico. Now, finally, the last meaning of para is an extension of the second, which is in order to. Okay, so a lot of times when we say to in English, what we really mean is in order to, right? He's studying in order to get a job. If you said he's studying to get a job, what you really mean there is that he's studying in order to get a job. And so to is actually just a shortened version of in order to, which is why para also means in order to. Okay, now por, the first meaning of por is not for. So I don't want you to think about por as for, okay? Por means because of, okay? This is why you have words like por qué, right? So if you said he's here because of you, está aquí por ti, that would mean he's here because of you, right? You are the reason he is here. Whereas if you said está aquí para ti, then it would mean he's here for you, like he's here for you, okay? Now, the second meaning of por is for, but only in the context of time. So for 10 years, 4 or 5 months, which is why it makes no sense to sort of say that there are 2 words for in Spanish. Because while it's technically true, it makes you think that you have to sit here and think between por and para, when in reality, it's almost always going to be para, and the only time there's por is if you're talking about a period of time, right? Por, like for 10 years, por 10 años. The last meaning of por is by, in the sense of by, right? Like written by, presented by, and so on. It could also be used as a preposition to show location, like it could be used as in or on, or beside, or across from. Stuff like that. And you'll sort of see natives use it in that way. And that's sort of how to learn the sort of intricacies there. So yeah, that's por and para explained. All right, now let's talk about the difference between de and desde. Desde is sort of a variation of de. So de in Spanish means from, of, or about. Okay, that's the sort of meaning of de. It probably has other meanings in certain contexts, but that's the meaning of de. Okay, from, of, or about. Now, desde is a sort of extension of from. Desde comes from from the meaning of from de. So that's why you hear stuff like soy de México, soy de España, soy de Suecia. It means I'm from this place, okay? Using de. Now, the difference between using from as de and using from as desde is that desde refers to a physical distance or a figurative or mental distance. So think about the sentence, I see you from here, okay? That from, the usage of from in that sentence is describing a physical distance. I see you from here, right? The from is describing the physical distance between us, the physical difference. So there you wouldn't use de, right? You wouldn't say te veo de aquí, you would say te veo desde aquí, right? I see you from here, referring to the distance, the physical distance between us. But it can also be used as a figurative distance, as in, what I mean by that is a distance in time, okay? A difference or distance in time. And so in English, if you said, since I was little or since I was young, in that context, the word since actually means from, right? You're saying from when I was young until now. And so in Spanish there, you'd use desde for the word since, because what you're really meaning is from, because what you're really saying is from when I was young until now. And so that's why we're using desde. You're saying from, but you're describing a distance in time, which is why I use desde. So for example, since I was a kid, desde que era niño, right? So here you'd use desde, okay? So that's the difference between de and desde, okay? You'll basically always use de, and desde only comes specifically when the word from is describing a physical distance or a distance in time, or like a figurative distance, you could call it. All right, now let's talk about que versus lo que. Que means what. Both of these words mean what, okay? But simply, que just means what when it's a question. So, ¿qué hora es? ¿Qué pasa? What's happening? Or what time is it? Whatever, right? Whereas lo que, even though it's two separate words, it's treated as one, which is what whenever it's a statement or basically not a question. And so think about it as like que. And so que is kind of like the what whenever you start a phrase or a question, okay? Whereas lo que is kind of like the what when it's in the middle of the sentence. And so if you want to say, what do you want? You'd say, ¿qué quieres? Right? What do you want? But if I were to say, I don't know what you want, then you'd say, no sé lo que quieres. Because one is a question and one is a statement. Now, there are cases where you'll see lo que in questions. The difference there is that sometimes what is used in statements, but statements are used in question. But generally speaking, que means what when it's a question, and lo que means what when it's not a question. And because of that, it could also mean like that which, or the thing that, right? And so if you're saying like, what is it that he wants? You'd say, ¿qué es lo que quiere, right? And so there you can see lo que being used in a question, but there it's not describing the question, right? The what that's describing the question is que, which is why it would be ¿qué es? And so there it's used as the thing that, or that which, okay? And so lo que is only really used as what whenever it's basically a blanket statement, okay? When it's basically a blanket statement, when it's not a question, okay? And que is used when it's a question. Now, moving along, we have the difference between que and cuál, okay? Now, directly, que means what, as we saw, and cuál means which. However, a lot of times you'll find that cuál will be translated as what. And so, really, what is the difference here? The main difference here is that que asks what something is, whereas cuál asks which one it is out of option. Your reflex in English is to always use what, right? But in Spanish, there's a bit of thinking here where if you said something like, okay, what is this, right? In Spanish, there, that what is describing what something is, right? And so there you just say ¿qué es esto? Right? But if you were to ask a question like, what is your favorite color? Well, think about what you're really asking. What you're really asking is, out of all the colors that exist, which is your favorite? So in Spanish, you wouldn't say, ¿qué es tu color favorito? You'd rather say, ¿cuál es tu color favorito? And so there you'd use which, ¿cuál in Spanish, rather than que. The one little thing here that can confuse you is that if the word that comes after is a noun or a verb, it will change. So if the word after is a noun, meaning it's a thing, right? It's not a verb. So if you were to say, for example, what color is your favorite, instead of what's your favorite color, then it always has to be que. So then you say, ¿qué color es tu favorito? Okay? As because color is a noun, right? It's a thing. So that's the one little rule there. Other than that, that's the logic behind que and cuál. Okay? Ask yourself, is the question asking me to choose out of a set of options, like when you ask someone for their favorite color or their favorite language or whatever? Or for example, if you ask them for their name, in Spanish, you would say, ¿cuál es tu nombre? You would say, which is your name, right? Because you're choosing out of the set lists of the names. But if you said, what name is your favorite? Even though the logic tells us that we should use which, in Spanish, it has to be que, because name, nombre, is a noun, right? It's a thing. It's not a verb. And so you'd actually say, ¿qué nombre es tu nombre? And so then you'd say, ¿qué nombre? Not cuál. So yeah, that's the logic for que versus cuál. All right, now let's talk about lo versus le. This one's very simple. So lo in Spanish means him, it, or you formal. And obviously, if you make it feminine, you get version, right? Or basically the feminine version. So to make it feminine, you just make it la. So la means her, it for a feminine word, and you formal for a feminine person. And then plural, and the plurals also apply, right? Los, las. Now, in Spanish, the receivers, meaning the people, the pronouns that receive the action of the verb, they have three versions, okay? The base version, so him, her, it, them, me, so on. The to version, so to me, to her, to it, and so on. And then the self version, the reflexive. So myself, yourself, itself, himself, and so on. So these are the three versions. And so lo is the base form, just simply him. And le simply just means to him. And so in Spanish, to him is actually just one word. It's le. In Spanish, him, her, it, and you formal are actually always grouped together. Okay, and this is why you see lo, la. Or in this case, le, meaning to him, to her, to it, and to you formal. That's what le means. So simply just ask yourself, in this context, is there a to? Okay, are we saying to him or are we just saying him? So if we were to say, I see him, in this case, do you think you'd use lo or le? You'd use lo, right? Because seeing someone isn't something you do to them, right? It's not. But if I were to say, I give him, would we use lo or le? You use le. If you were to say, I tell him, would you use lo or le? You'd use le, because telling is something you do to someone, right? You're telling to them. And so there it's le. You'd say to him. Or for example, I gave him. In Spanish, you wouldn't say lo di. You wouldn't say lo di. You would say le di, because giving something is something you give to them, right? And so that's the logic there. All right. Finally, let's talk about the preterite versus the imperfect. Now, I just want you to do one thing for me now. Forget the word preterite and imperfect. I just want you to forget those words, because you probably don't even know what they mean, and they're probably kind of confusing. I didn't even know these words existed until after I got fluent in Spanish. Okay, so that just tells you how useless they are, how useless it is to know them. Instead, we're going to rename these to line in the past and the point in the past. Okay, so the line in the past, if you think about a timeline, on the timeline, okay, when we're referring to tenses in Spanish are just the time periods that we're describing on the timeline. So you have the present, the future, and the past. Now, both of these are describing the past, okay? But the line in the past is describing a period of time in the past, okay? So this is why I call it the line in the past, right? Because it's a line on the timeline in the past. So this is referring to stuff like I was eating, or I used to eat, okay? That's the sort of translation there. Now, comparatively, the preterite, the point in the past, is referring to a point, a dot on the timeline in the past, okay? It is a singular point in the past. So think about I ate, I spoke, I ran, and so on, okay? And so one is describing a period of time in the past, which is the imperfect in this case, and the other is describing the point in the past, which is the preterite, okay? That is the difference between these two. And so English will make this annoying, because in English, you'll find cases where we'll say, for example, we'll say I was for something that isn't a period of time in the past, but a point. If you want to say, for example, in English, we say I was born, but being born isn't something that happens over a period of time. No, it's something that happens at a point in time. And so in Spanish, you don't say I was born. You don't use the line in the past. You don't say nacía, but rather you say nací, which is the point in the past, because being born is something that happens at a point in the past. And so even if the translation doesn't show it, the logic does, which is why you want to think about it through logic and not just translating phrases. Okay. So in Spanish, you actually say I born, because being born is something that happens in a point in the past. And so that's the difference between the preterite and imperfect. And so reframing it as the point in the past and the line in the past will help you a lot with understanding these two tenses. So that's all of these explained. Okay. So putting these all together, now these aren't random. These are actually, tangible, reasonable differences. Now you have a freedom that you didn't have before, because English kind of restricts us with these things, but Spanish gives us that freedom, which in some ways gives you a different sort of brain. In fact, there's this proverb in Azerbaijani, which is that however many languages a person speaks, that's how much of a person he is, or that's how many people he is, which basically just means the more languages you speak, the more people you are, because each language operates on a different logic and a way of sort of expressing yourself and a different framework of thinking. And so each language gets its sort of own brain, which this proverb is describing as its own person, which is a really cool and relatable thing, okay? Because when I'm speaking one language, I feel like I'm a different person when I'm speaking, compared to when I'm speaking another language. So yeah, that's the differences between all of these ones. I hope I covered basically the majority of these sort of verses concepts. And one thing to understand is that to learn these, I don't want you to sort of memorize examples, but rather I want you to practice speaking examples of these. And mainly, the way I just learned these was just studying native Spanish content. And so I have videos on my channel where I go through exactly how I do that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If you're serious about learning Spanish and you want help from me, then you can check the second link in the description. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed and stay humble.